So I'm going to call our select board meeting of Tuesday, May 26th to order. And the first item is approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. We do have a couple changes. We have an addition, a 12A, consideration of outside consumption permit for Fire and Ice Restaurant, and actually added some others to that.
Did we have the Middlebury Hearth, which is flatbread, and Two Brothers Tavern?
Okay, and then we're changing 12 to discuss net metering project as opposed to approval of a potential one to more discuss where we would like to head and maybe give some guidance. Is there any other changes? Outside consumption permit for Fire and Ice Restaurant, actually added some others. Somebody got their speaker on and listening to it on the TV or something?
I just muted everyone.
Are there any?
There's also a fire department request for a PO for HVAC server and operating system. S5A.
S5A? I'm gonna have to you have to help me keep track of all these.
Okay.
Any other changes, amendments? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of the amended agenda, signify with thumbs up. Okay, thank you. Be nice if you could actually pull the frames that you want in an order so you could, because the board is all split throughout the frames. Citizen comments. Is there anyone who's on for something that's not on the agenda?
Emily Josselson is with us, and I suggested that she make her comments about masks after Tom Hanley, police chief, gives his local emergency management update.
Okay. So we'll move on then. So next is Chief Shaw, request for approval of source procurement of fire hose.
Yes, thank you. This request is
Farhad is raising his hand.
Farhad, unmute your mic.
We did not approve the minutes.
Thank you. Before we do you, Dave, we're going to go back to the minutes of May 12th, 2020, regular select board meeting.
I moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Amendments or changes to the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor with their thumbs up. Okay. The heat's cooked my brain, I guess, here, Dave, so now back to you.
okay, not a problem. It's only the first day of hot too. You're not going to look good by the end of summer, Brian. I have a request in to the board for a purchase order for sole sourcing of 5 lengths of 4-inch large diameter hose. This hose is to use from a fire hydrant or a water source to the engine or other water receiving device. The hoses we're replacing are late 1980s fire hose and no longer pass the test. So I would like the 3 we need right away and 2 are for inventory.
Questions of the board? Pleasure of the board.
I'll make a motion to approve Fire Chief David Shaw's request to purchase 100 feet of 4-inch Protoflow rubber fire hose from Fire Hose District under the sole source purchase provision of town's purchasing policy for a total cost of $3,092.85. That includes shipping.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments on the motion?
That would be five sections of 100-foot fire hose. You said one, but it's just a technicality.
Okay, 5 sections of the 4-inch Protoflow.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks for the clarification, Dave.
You're welcome.
All in favor then, signify with thumbs up. Okay. Thank you. And 5A, Dave?
5A is for the upgrade of the HVAC control system at Station 1. Believe it or not, that system's 8 years old. The software the versions are one version behind, and the server is running Windows 7, which will no longer be supported. This system controls the heating and cooling at Station 1 in its entirety.
Questions of the board? Pleasure of the board.
I don't see the motion to read.
Oh, this was in addition to the agenda. The amount is $2,350.
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of the HVAC and software upgrade for the station number 1 for a total cost of, what'd you say, Kathleen, 2,053?
350.
2,350?
Right.
Thank you.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any other comments on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor then signify with a thumbs up. Okay, thank you. Next then is item 6, Chief Hanley, our local emergency management director, on update on the pandemic response.
Yeah, it's been a busy 2 weeks since we last talked. We completed a follow-up on 14 reported governor's order violations. Most of them were business practices that we've been able to work with them and come to an agreement on how they're going to comply with these things, as well as a couple of reports of out-of-state college students moving into their apartments that they've been renting right along, and making sure that they're doing the requisite quarantine, and we've been getting cooperation in that regard. So as these complaints come in, whether they're reported to the state, whether they're reported to the Attorney General or whoever, they end up with us, and we follow up on all of them and then set a time when we can go out and take whatever corrective action is necessary. The hotels in town are starting to try to remove some of the 211 people that are there. The Charter House is planning on opening on June 1st, and the Charter House shelteries will go, but the 211 folks are going to be there probably through the end of June. I can't even begin to describe what's going on there, especially in the past week or so. We've had acts of domestic violence, inebriation requiring transit, many retail thefts, a stolen car, assaults, car breaks, theft of a pocketbook. Made a number of arrests on these folks. That's how we know who's doing it. And on and on and on. And they've committed a lot of destruction inside these hotels to the point that there's going to need some significant renovation before they open up some of these rooms. I understand the Marriott today is no longer going to accept anyone from 211, and whoever they have here now that have been placed by Agency Human Services will eventually be moved out. So this has been a bit of a challenge for all of us these past few weeks, especially with the folks that came down here from Burlington and points unknown. Moving on other things, the food bank was held in Middlebury last week. The State Emergency Operations Center was supposed to file a plan with us. They never filed a plan or a schematic as to how they were going to operate this. So we were kind of caught by surprise the day before when a trooper called us up and asked us where our traffic and security plan was, and I didn't even know what he was talking about. So we never had any communication with the SEOC and had to kind of fly by the seat of our pants. And of course, at the same time, the pop-up testing was being done in Middlebury, and at the same time, a FedEx truck rolled over in East Middlebury. We had couple of these homeless people queued up, stealing stuff from Martin's and other places, stealing a cell phone from somebody. So we offered no help at all to the food bank. We just didn't have anybody to do it. So hopefully we can correct that if they're going to do something like that here again, because we really need a heads up. There's a new testing date, June 5th, Friday. So if anybody didn't get their test in for the last time, or they haven't been able to get in on this week, June 5th is the next date. And finally, we've been working with the local restaurants to try to smooth the way to get them to open up for their outdoor consumption. I've done some site visits, looked around, and we figured out how we're going to make this thing work for them. So we've been a little busy with that as well. Other than that, that's it.
Chief, there's been a lot of correspondence about a large gathering of college students, and from what I've read, it looked like mostly hearsay, but with smaller groups. I know you guys weren't called on it, but have you had a chance to look into that at all, and what did you find if you did?
Yeah, I've got an ongoing correspondence with Lisa of the college trying to figure out exactly what happened. I spoke to one of the folks from Chipman Park earlier today, as well as I tried to get a hold of another one that supposedly has some photographs of this, and I've not gotten a return call on that yet. So we don't really know what happened. We got no complaints. There were no noise complaints or anything that were involving that. Nobody called us. From what I understand from public safety is they seem to feel everything was under control. It wasn't a rowdy situation. They were just kind of keeping people separated. I don't have all the facts or details on that yet. We haven't really gotten everything together. As I said, it's an ongoing conversation I'm having with Lisa, and she sent me a couple more inquiries so I could get into that as well.
Okay, I think maybe for the board and for the those that are watching, there was some complaints made to the college and courtesy copied to the town about a large gathering of one of the emails, the early emails talked about up to 100 students, but in that they were not practicing social distancing, and so, which is a pretty large, pretty significant issue were a situation. The college is looking into it, and a bunch of the neighbors also chimed in, certainly concerned, but no one had seen it. And so, I guess I'm concerned because the college has been working very diligently to try to make sure that students understand the risk and that they're practicing social distancing. In fact, I was pretty proud of that. It was our college that was one of the very first ones to take the situation seriously. So it's a pretty significant issue if it were, because it's against what they've been working hard to protect against. But there is no, at this point, evidence to the fact that it really did happen. I would say that if people who are watching out there, if you do see a situation like that, we have a very professional police organization that could look into that and document it and help work with the college to make sure that if there needs to be more, that the college is doing that. So I just say that because it's a difficult situation when there's a lot of accusations thrown and no facts. So we need to make sure we're basing those things on the facts. And if you can help Chief make sure that they're able to log those facts, it would be great.
Yeah, we'll check with Lisa on public safety. There were 2 public safety officers there at this event that saw what was going on, so they really hold the key as to what they saw. As I said, we weren't there, we didn't get called, we had no reason to be there or even suspect anything was going on. We did deal with a couple of unrelated noise complaints over the next 2 nights, but fairly minor in scope, and was just a residential thing more than anything.
Yeah, you know, we work pretty closely with the college, so both Sunday and Monday, I heard from the president, very, very concerned, making sure that they're, if there is an issue, that they're addressing it. So at the time, I was not aware of any.
Yeah, this was a surprise to me when I got a call this morning about it. I had not heard of it. It doesn't appear in any of our logs, so it was a non-event as far as we were concerned, because we were not involved or notified.
Okay. Well, so if somebody does see stuff, please do make sure it gets logged and somebody gets a chance to look into it. Next, I think is this where we're going to talk about the masks, Kathleen?
Yes, please.
So, Chief, we've had a lot of correspondence on the masks, looking for a town's support for a mandatory mask ordinance, and we've had council look into that, but we also would like to get your thoughts on that, Chief, if you don't mind starting out, and I can cover council.
Yeah, I would tread lightly on this. I mean, it sounds like this is something that'll work and make everybody wear their mask. I have some concerns about that. I have concerns about how we're going to actually enforce this thing. As you see the number of governor's orders, issues that we've had to deal with in the past week or so, these things can get out of hand. Of course, if you have an ordinance, there's an expectation that it will be enforced. And I'm afraid that it's going to be difficult for us to do that, taking a call that somebody's in a store without a mask on, and having to look for them, or go in the store with 2 police officers to try to, I don't know, stop the guy or whatever. I'm not sure how this would work. I'm also concerned about creating more chances for us to be engaging people that aren't protected. I have a very finite supply of N95 masks. This is what we wear when we engage people. When these are gone, they're gone, and I'm out. We have been told that we are not getting any more from the Strategic National Stockpile. And we didn't get any from them, and we're not going to be getting any more. So we're very cautious on how we use these masks. Regular kind of surgical masks are fine, but they don't give you the protection. They can't be sealed. They're really useless when it comes to the kind of business we deal with. They're good, to wear in a store to keep you from sneezing on things and stuff. Beyond that, they don't have the protection that we need. So we're a little cautious about how many more contacts are we going to have to make that are not really serious. And I don't mean to undermine the fact that you need a mask. It could be disease prevention there. But I'm a little concerned about that. Another thing is, how heavy-handed do we want to be as a town? We want to send police officers after people that aren't wearing masks. I don't know. It's. I think it needs a lot of thought. And Emily had written something today which makes a lot of sense, and I consider that as well. But I just want to tread lightly on this, or make sure we know what we're doing before we just run out and try to pass an ordinance.
Well, there's a question as whether we can pass an ordinance at all, at least on short notice, right?
Correct.
So Kathleen forwarded that question to our town council bench, and without it being warned, it's not advisable to proceed with trying to pass an ordinance. Easy to challenge, not having been a warned item first and foremost. There's other reasons to have caution for an ordinance like that as well, but certainly that takes it off the table as far as passing something tonight. However, I think we should have a robust discussion about it, and if there are things that we wanted to look into subsequent to this discussion, and if it was something that you wanted on the next select board agenda. Thoughts of the board?
I just have I just have a comment I want to add to what Chief said. Is the enforcement part on part of the police department, but I also am concerned about the small business owners. How are they going to enforce? Are they just going to stick a sign in the window, or what do we do if we have to force people?
Right now, you can make it a condition of entering, and if you really don't want somebody in there without a mask, it becomes a trespassage. I mean, that's how it's dealt with now. Most people, if you're not allowed in there without a mask, then you don't come in without a mask. And it then becomes somebody wants to force the issue, then we can get involved in that regard.
I'm not necessarily wanting us to make an ordinance to make people wear a mask, but I understand, being a small business person too, it really puts us in a difficult spot if we say that we want people to wear masks in our property, or we recommend that they do, and we have to be the bad guy that goes up and tells them to put it on. And if we don't do that, then our other guests are going to be angry at us for not making them put on a mask. So we're in kind of lose-lose when it comes to anything for the mask. And obviously, what makes it easy is we can say, hey, it's a town ordinance, you got to wear a mask.
And that's fine. Just understand the limitations on the actual enforcement. You have two options here: one, to make it a criminal offense with an emergency health order under Title 20, or passing an ordinance and making it a civil offense. Many people won't recognize the civil. You can write them a ticket and they throw it out. There's not much we can do. I don't know if the state's attorney is going to be willing to prosecute people for this under the emergency health order. I know the Attorney General has been very reluctant to do this as well. So, again, these things to think about. You can pass an ordinance without a fine and just use that as the compulsory way to get people to wear a mask by posting it. But another thing, since it's an ordinance that would be unique to Middlebury, and I mean unique to Middlebury because nobody else in the county has that, and you really need to post it. It needs to be posted everywhere, just like our winter parking ban. You can't have somebody go in and get a ticket or be confronted by the police when they had no idea that there was an ordinance to begin with. So these are some of the routes that you need to think of as what happens with these type of mandates.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this too quite a bit, and it strikes me, one of the things that's interesting is that I think the governor's done a tremendously good job of helping to steer us through this crisis, and he has communication and access to so many experts of different departments, and for some reason he did not mandate this across the state. So I have to trust there's a good reason for that, and we even heard from the Speaker of the House that she could see the difficulty of putting an ordinance out. To me, and the Chief really summarized it pretty well. It's the enforcement issue. So why have an ordinance that you can't enforce properly? Does it make somebody like Fahad, is he responsible for reporting somebody who comes into his store and doesn't have a mask? Is it going to be a situation where we're going to be sending officers off to respond to these issues, and I'm not even sure the situation, if they write a citation, could it then end up in being challenged, and so then they have to go in to make a court appearance to deal with that. It just strikes me as something that's not enforceable, and I do personally see a good direction forward on this thing. I think, the majority of people and public information has been certainly getting across, and I've even seen situations where people in the public have approached people who aren't wearing the mask and raised the issue to them. But I'm afraid it's unenforceable, and it would be unwise to pass something that's unenforceable.
If I might make a suggestion, you have a route to do this with a little bit of compulsoriness to it, and that is you can have a select board policy which goes out as this is a town policy that you must wear a mask here. Like a selectman's policy, it's not enforceable, but you set the tenor that it is something that the town wants you to do. I mean, you can do that tonight and have that policy out by tomorrow if that's something you approved. In the meantime, you can debate and deliberate over whether you want to take it a step further and make it an ordinance.
You mean a policy would be more of an advisory thing, that we're saying everyone should be wearing masks when they leave their house, right?
When they go into a public place, you don't want to say leave their house.
Yeah.
But they've got to be going into a public place where they're in close contact with others, and you need to word it like that.
Okay.
Entering a retail establishment or entering a place. We recommend people wear masks. Look, I'm a big one for wearing masks. I don't go home leave my house without it. But not everybody feels that way, and I'm a little hesitant, on the other hand, to stimulate civil disobedience over masks and people trying to make a point, as we've seen in other areas. But I think if you come out with a select board policy and word it as such, so it's posted with the town of Middlebury header on it, that this is the town policy that you need to wear a mask when you go into whatever, this facility, or however you want to put that, and allow that to be posted around town. It at least gives you a first step without going through the entire deliberation of the ordinance, and you can have it done tomorrow. And you can argue over what words you need. You've got a number of policies out there now, about the pooper scooper policy and a number of things out there now, which kind of set the tenor of how you want people to conduct themselves in public. And I think this would be a good first step to do this, and it'll allow you to measure the effectiveness as well as you deliberate it through an ordinance process.
Just to clarify, we do have a process that we don't just pass a policy in a meeting either. It goes through policy review, so we have a policy committee that reviews it.
But it's quicker than the ordinance process.
Right. Right. So, Jocelyn?
It's Emily.
Emily, I'm sorry.
First of all, I want to thank every one of you for all the good work you've been doing to steer us through this strange time. I really appreciate Tom's updates. They're witty and contentful and wonderful, and Jim's, and, you know, just the steady steering you've all been doing. I really thank you for that. And I guess I would just echo Dan's comment that I think, and Tom's suggestion, I think Tom's suggestion is great, that there be a select board policy as early as tonight, and then let's warn it or go through the proper further discussion, because my concern, I'm absolutely not in favor of wearing masks every time you leave the house, but when you enter a place of public accommodation and you've got other members of the public and you've got employees who are there on, doing a service to the public, and the employers being caught in this awful bind of, having it on their shoulders to try to protect their customers and their employees. I'm just trying to figure out a way that it's not, the onus isn't on them, because life is hard enough for them now, reopening. I also appreciate that the response forces are stretched way too thin, and I don't think it necessarily follows that it's a bad faith move on the select board's or town's part to indicate this preference that people wear masks in places of public accommodation, and not and know that enforcement may be challenging, may not be the top priority of the town. I think just the deterrent factor and the imprimatur of the select board's authority will be enough in most instances. And in those rare circumstances where confrontations happen through no fault of the store owners, those are the times that the police should get involved if people are coming in and making trouble. But for most people, I think it's going to be, Middlebury is following what Burlington and South Burlington did, and these are small spaces with, people in them who are otherwise sacrificing to be there to help us. So that's my pitch.
Aaron?
You can also talk about the responsibility of the citizen, and it seems to me public safety is a basic obligation that all of us have toward each other. I mean, we don't. We're supposed to drive our cars safely and so on and so forth, and stop when pedestrians want to cross, and go through all of these measures. So it certainly finally ends up the responsibility of each one of us who live here, and I don't think there's a way in which, apart from enforcing it, or using the force of a police force to enforce things like this. That's sort of the last resort. But it seems to me the first line of defense is the obligation that people feel as residents living here in a human community, and having a responsibility for the safety of each other. And I think that's where it ought to start. That ought to be the primary motivation. If you don't have that motivation, it seems to me then we're all at war against each other. And I think that I think people should wear masks. I mean, personally, I think, and when they go into public places, and not endanger others. I wouldn't be opposed to having an advisory, or say this is the policy that we think we should be practicing in Middlebury. But if it's a policy that the people have to practice, it seems to me. And we shouldn't be depending upon everyone finally having to call on Tom Hanley to strong arm us into doing the right thing. It's the right thing, I think. That's the point. That's where we start.
Karen, you had your hand up.
I just wanted to share a little bit of information. So last week, Lindsay and I were chatting about this, and I put out a poll to retailers in Middlebury. I asked 59 retailers, and I got 35 responses in the last few days. It was 38% of wanting to decide for themselves to 62% wanting a town mandate of some sort. The other thing that I wanted to share was I had a call today with the other downtowns in the state. A number of communities are considering the same thing that you are right now. Hartford and Wilmington chose to go the route of a resolution as opposed to an ordinance. Brattleboro, South Burlington, Bennington all mandated it. Barry decided not to. So I just wanted to update you on that stuff.
Judy, you had your hand up. Unmute your mic. Lower left.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So, as a native New Yorker and a person who has a son living in the middle of the pandemic in New York City, I have been keeping up with the New York governor's daily press conferences. And I am incredibly impressed with what he has had to say, how he has conducted himself, and his whole shtick is to present the facts. Daily, he presents the facts and says, as a result of these facts, this is our course. I think it's clear that if Vermonters, we've remained safe relatively, and I think that's part of our, the size of our population, how separated we are, and I understand the independent Vermont mojo. At the same time, facts are facts. And if we know that not adhering to social distancing is going to cause a second spike, if we know that not wearing masks is going to endanger others, And I think one of the most important things that has come out of this is it is not about us as individuals. It is about us as a community. It's about us as a family. And how do we move forward as a family? And in reference to that, I mean, there are cities that are closing down streets so that restaurants can open. And all of a sudden I thought to myself, can we make, Main Street in Middlebury one way for the time being so restaurants can open? Can we make the drive-through, the parking lot that goes behind the library and Mr. Ups? Can we make Exchange Street one way so restaurants can open? And I know it's difficult.
Judy, can I just cut you off here because we're talking about masks? We're going to talk about things we can do later in the agenda, so I don't want to mix apples and oranges here.
Okay, but I don't necessarily think it's apples and oranges. I think it's an creative way of thinking. And so, yeah, if it's hard for you to wear a mask, don't go out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Lindsay?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, something I've been thinking about this past week as I've been hearing from various people in the community is how fragile our economic recovery is going to be for a very long time. And I think a second wave of COVID would be really detrimental to our town as a whole. The whole issue, I think, is a little bit disappointing because, no one balks at the idea that they have to wear shoes to go in Dunkin' Donuts. And I think it's a very easy thing for people to do to protect our community. I think the crux of it, though, is the way I think we should frame it is what can we do to encourage the most number of people to do what's best for our community. I hate that it's become sort of a hot button issue, and I don't want to put anybody in that position, but I think if we can think about it in terms of how to encourage the most people to do it, whatever that is, if it's an ordinance, if it's something else. But I do think something that's town-wide would take pressure off owners, so it's not an individual owner making an individual policy. It's something that our community is saying is what's best. And I'm not saying what that should be, that's how I'm thinking of it. That's all.
Victor?
Well, I think it's an established fact that wearing face masks and keeping distance is a means of preventing the virus from spreading, and it's a means of public safety, and it's worked, and that, it would seem to me, commends it. And I mean, we could talk about this all night. The question is, what should the town do? It can't pass an ordinance tonight. It can, perhaps the Selectboard can adopt a resolution. I would not be opposed to that. In fact, I would be happy to try to frame one, that the Selectboard pass a resolution that we strongly recommend, or that people wear face masks and keep the proper distance when they're out in the public, or when they go into public facilities such as shops and such like. And we strongly recommend it as their public duty to do this. Then we're not asking for something to be enforced by store owners or the hotel owners or B&B owners and so on and so forth. We're simply recommending that this is a probably a duty that we all have insofar as public safety really depends on how we act towards each other or interact. And if I happen to have the virus and I go out in public and I sneeze and spread it to someone else, I've put that person's life in danger. That's the way it is, pure and simple.
Nick, Nick, unmute your mute, unmute.
Unmic my mute, yeah, got it, okay. I don't think anybody here, or anybody who has proposed this, doing something, has any disagreement with the fact that it is a public health emergency. Wearing of masks does have a benefit. The social distancing has a benefit. I think where we're running into a difficulty is what does this thing we create look like without putting an undue burden, especially onto the shopkeepers and our police force. So the term, Karen, I think you brought up of a resolution may in fact be that answer, where it's something that is a public statement by this board explaining the significance of this effort, but without getting into a point where it becomes something that is just again difficult to enforce. And if we were to go to a policy or an ordinance, then that's going to take a lot more time to really get that drafted out right. So if we want to do something right away, it seems a resolution is the way to approach it.
Judy, you had your hand up? You're muted again, Judy.
Hear that word. So one of the things I would suggest is that you look at other models. There are models all over the country at this point as to how to handle this. There are models all over, and they are ones that do not require anybody doing anything but their civic duty. The one other thing that I would suggest is running a contest for a public service announcement. Have anybody and everybody in Middlebury or elsewhere send in an announcement for why you would wear a mask, why you would safe distance. Sorry, again, I'm a New Yorker. In a state of 19.5 million people, they have figured it out.
I wouldn't say that.
I would.
I'm a New Yorker too, and I disagree with you, but
They've got a lot of issues. I think Vermont's done a better job, so.
I would be happy to move a resolution that the select board issue an advisory resolution that we're asking the public to do their civic duty and to wear masks and practice social distancing. It's perhaps the fundamental way, as a fundamental way to maintain public safety. I'm offering that as a resolution, a motion, if you'd like. I don't know, I haven't worded it very well, but I'm sure Kathleen has it down.
Julia, we're moving on this.
This is my last comment. This is my last comment.
Make it quick.
Okay? Last comment. Why? Why would you make this a resolution? What is your basis? What are your facts?
Basis is that there is evidence that wearing face masks and keeping public distance.
Then put that out there. Put it out there.
Well, it's
Put it out there, because not everybody gets it.
all right. We're
Thanks.
not writing a book,
Bye.
right? Just a resolution. Goodbye. I think it's simply, it's not enforceable, but it's an advisory and an appeal to the public to do this.
Thoughts from the board? Heather?
I think I want to go back to the original recommendation at the beginning of the discussion that we warn it. I know I hate to take more time on the subject, but based on council's email, he hadn't had time to really think it through. I'm not sure I'm quite ready, even with a resolution. I think maybe I might have been if Karen's data was a little bit stronger, more, what would she say, 62 to 38, so like 60-40, I don't know. I don't think I'm ready. I don't think I'm ready for a resolution yet. That's all. Anyway, I'm not that I'm not in favor of wearing masks. I'm just trying to weigh everything that Tom said, what council said, what we need to do, what we can enforce, and I think I'd rather give it another couple weeks.
Karen?
Would it be helpful for you guys to get more information about what other communities are doing and some of the thought process that they've gone through, or does that sort of just muddy the waters for us?
I think we're doing our own process. We don't need to copy another community.
No worries, I just wanted to offer.
Especially you look at Chittenden County, it's definitely a different base than what we have here. We're more rural. We have very few cases. So I do think that we need to go through our own process. So we're gonna move on the agenda then. I'm not sensing a consensus, and so we've spent a half an hour on this. So I think we need to have some. If you have some questions that you'd like to have council address, or that you'd like to have beat around, if people think about on the board, please send them to Kathleen, and she can issue them out to all of us. Any thoughts that you have? Certainly, there's been a lot of good correspondence to us as a board. I'm certainly willing to do something. I have my own reservations over, the highest incidence of spread is in those areas that we're really not covering with the, a restaurant who's going to wear a mask while they're eating. And so it's got its pitfalls, but I think an education process and then going through and having some more deliberation, if there is something we can do to help support the downtown shop owners, because also differences, as I thought about it, were the difference in your clientele, whether you've got walk-in traffic and from potential tourism, whatnot, or if you have basically closed traffic from the rural farm community or something. That our clientele are certainly different than the clientele of some of the downtown shops in Dan. So I think there's got to be thought through it. I don't think it's a simple solution, and that's probably why our governor has made it more of a case of educating people. So Fred is with us tonight. Fred is going to talk about the Vermont. He's going to give us an update on the pandemic and go through the results of the surveys that they've done. So Fred, sorry for keeping you waiting so long.
Not a problem. Interesting discussion. So you have the narrative and the data from the business survey that we did. So I'll leave that to you to look over at your convenience. But there's some interesting information in there. The main theme of concerns going forward, we're split between economic recovery and health and safety concerns, which reflects the conversation you're having right now. But the thing I want to point out is we asked the question of what the Addison County Recovery Team could do to help people, get reopened. And there were a lot of ideas, a lot of which we don't really have the power to enact or do. But there were things like a lot of suggestions around ways to encourage buy local. We're open, responsible, and safe campaign, and that's kind of connected to one of the parts of the governor's package, because there'll be an application from a regional group that includes ourselves and the chamber, Better Middlebury, Karen's organization, the other two downtown organizations, to apply to that program for marketing money. There's also a call for continued efforts to provide, accurate and concise information about reopening and guidance, and we'll continue to do that. Also, a lot of requests for providing easily accessible and low-cost financing and grants, and there's a part in the governor's proposal that would meet that request as well, and we can talk a little more about that. There's basically 4 parts to the governor's proposal, one of which is financing, various forms of financing. There was also a suggestion of collaboration on securing and distributing PPE, and that's something the recovery team is going to look at, maybe partnering with the state to get and distribute PPE to childcare and municipalities and others that need it. Businesses are going to need a lot more, cleaning supplies and masks. Providing network opportunities, we did that today. We had town hall. We had about 60 people attend, I believe, from all around the county. And providing business technical and recovery assistance. And ACEDC will continue to do that, along with the SBDC and the downtown organizations and the chamber. And that's also another part of the governor's proposal is to enhance the technical assistance network that's around the state with some funding. So take a look at those survey results when you have a minute. There was also a survey of nonprofits that the United Way did. Helena presented those results at the town hall that we held today, and we can send you the slide deck that she presented. And there's also another survey out right now with similar questions pointed at employees. So we'll have those results in a couple of weeks. Also, I think I mentioned at the last select board meeting that Middlebury had been selected as one of 3 Vermont communities to be a part of the federal recovery team rapid needs assessment. And that's underway. Hopefully some of you will be contacted by the Global Resilience Institute at Northeastern to do interviews. They also listened in at the town hall that we did today and attended the recovery team meeting last week. They've seen the business survey results and actually asked us if they can use that as a model for the 18 communities around the Northeast that they're doing needs assessments with, as a model to do the same survey in those communities. So I assume you've all seen the announcement by the governor on the package that he's put forth. Obviously has to be approved by the legislature. It includes $5 million for technical assistance. We're assuming that part of that will come through ACEDC and to supplement the SBDC. They got direct funding from CARES Act. So some of this will go to the regional development corporations to provide technical assistance and purchase technical assistance for businesses like e-commerce and accounting and assistance that they might need to recover. There's a housing component to this package. There's a marketing component, as I mentioned. There'll be a statewide marketing effort that will start out marketing in-state and later on would expand to marketing out of state. But there's also a regional marketing and consumer stimulus grant section that would come to regions. And as I mentioned, Rob Carter, myself, Karen, and 2 other downtown organizations will be putting together an application for that, if that gets passed by the legislature, to that program. We may need to expand and include like Rutland in our region, because we're not quite sure how they're defining regions yet, but then there's the financial assistance piece, $250 million, that has 3 components. One is emergency action grants that'll go right out to businesses. There's really no application. The tax department just figures out how much revenue a business brought into the state, and they calculate a grant directly to the business. So it's quick and easy. That's directed towards food and accommodation services, retail, and agriculture. Then there's a grant and loan program that's modeled on the SBA disaster loan that provides a grant and a loan, and that's going to go through VITA, be available to businesses and nonprofit organizations that meet a certain threshold. And then there's the third component is the Vermont Restart Loan and Grant Program, and that will be administered. The proposal is to have it administered through the regional development corporations. We would be the portal, and we would refer the business to an appropriate lender. But it also it's a loan and a grant, but you have to apply for the loan to get the grant. And that's the one, I don't know how much detail you want to get into tonight, but that's the one that I've been talking to Kathleen about, transferring your CDBG fund to ACEDC to administer as part of this program. And we would also put part of our revolving fund into it as well. So it's an effort to kind of aggregate all of the revolving loan funds around the state and make them available to businesses as emergency loans. And the appropriation piece would come from the legislature, the grant piece of it. So they would come, the business would apply to us, and we would do the loan ourselves using the money that money you would transfer to us plus our revolving loan fund. If we run out of money, we would refer them to the Vermont Community Loan Fund or one of the other lenders, but we would still administer the grant piece of it as well. There's a lot of moving pieces. It's got to be approved by the legislature, and the thing you need to think about at this point is, do you want to transfer that? I think it's around $90,000 you have in CDBG fund. You'd have to do a closeout and close it out with the state, transfer it to us, and we would use it to help administer this program that they're proposing. You should know that it would be available to any business in the region that has some impact on Middlebury. In other words, it could be somebody in Shoreham or Cornwall that applies to it, as long as they have some kind of they have customers for Middlebury. But the idea is that these funds become available statewide, but we wouldn't, the fund that we do here would take applications from this region.
think the balance is 60,000 roughly that we have now, Fred.
Right.
That's about what we have in our revolving loan fund, so we'd have a total of about 120,000.
120. And Kathleen, do we need to, if we were, are you looking to have a motion this evening to
or not tonight? I would formulate something for you for the next meeting.
Okay. So with that thought, questions from the board or thoughts from the board as far as would we want to go to that next step?
I think you have a one-pager that describes the program, the requirements, and very little underwriting.
We've struggled to come up with a process in the committee to oversee that, and this was how we came about talking about getting ACDC to oversee our funds, and the thought being to turn them over to them and let them administer it as part of their greater program. Heather.
I think it sounds like a good way to use those funds, and I would be supportive. I know we're not necessarily making a decision tonight. I would just say that, anything we can do to put those, even if it's not a whole lot, put those funds out there, make it available to businesses, I think is better than it sitting in our account. So I feel comfortable allowing ACDC to administer that money for us.
Are there any objections? If not, I think that we would just let Kathleen know that we're ready to go forward with that when she's got the proposal. That's what I'm seeing, Kathleen. So, okay. Any questions of Fred on all the different programs? And Fred, I did get a chance to look through the survey, and I'm anxious to hear from the committee that's coming through what they find. Seems like there's no shortage of need out there.
Yes, that's true, and that there's a lot of businesses, very small businesses, that just didn't fit the profile for the federal programs that came through the SBA, and hopefully these state programs get passed and will help them out.
Yeah. Okay. Seeing no questions for you, Fred, I'm going to move on. We've got Jim Gish here with us, our community liaison. Give us an update on the downtown bridge replacement project.
Thanks.
Jim.
You guys hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, great. Well, here's one thing I can share with you. Masks are a challenge in 90-degree weather. So, but the construction crew is all masking up and adhering to...
Your volume is very, very low, Jim.
Maybe just get a little bit closer to the mic, Jim.
Yeah, because that's as high as we'll go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's good.
Better? Okay. So here's a quick update then on the construction project. So as I mentioned in my note to the select board last week, Hvac is essentially up to full strength right now. And so there's very visible construction taking place this week in the center of town. The part of the project right now is the removal of Merchants Row Bridge. As planned, Merchants Row was closed this morning. It will remain closed through the 10-week shutdown. And the deck panels were removed, so the bridge is in the process of being removed. The actual removal will take place on Thursday. A crane will be sitting over on the Town Hall Theater side of Merchants Row, and it will lift the bridge up, and it will temporarily store it and put it on insurance, and then move out probably next week. So that will allow the crew to continue working below the purchase road grades as well. The other thing of note is the drilling is taking place right in the middle of downtown. If you've been downtown walking or driving, you've seen that Main Street is down to one lane. We had to close the footbridge for a while today because the drilling's taking place right at that spot. A perfect storm, the National Bank of Middlebury closed Prentice Alley this week too, so they can install a gas line. So traffic is relatively light on the pedestrian side downtown, very heavy on the vehicular side downtown. But I think that the flaggers and the crew are doing a good job of kind of managing through this situation. Last thing of note is I would expect that perhaps later this week or early next, we're going to hear from V-Trans and Hvac on the dates. The general consensus for some time now has been the first or second week of July for 10 weeks, which will take us into about the middle of September. We don't have any word on that yet, but I'm expecting that to have those dates happen together with the Selectboard.
Questions of Jim? Okay, thank you, Jim.
Yeah.
Next, we've got Nancy Malcolm and Karen DeGay here to talk about the work plan for the marketing grant program for downtown. Take it away.
You're muted, Nancy.
Got it. Sorry. Thanks. I think all of you have the PowerPoint. And I don't know, Karen, is that going to be up or not?
Would you like me to put it up or try to put it up?
I don't know. Do you need? I mean, I don't need it. Do you need it, Karen? Okay. You all have it. So that seems good. Needless to say, a lot has changed from all of our plans that we had been working on, and well, they were all pretty well in place with the COVID piece. So we had some real important questions, and we had an opportunity to meet with John Griffin, our project manager from AOT, to clarify when the grant had to be spent by. And at first, we were under the assumption that it was supposed to be December 30th of 2020. At this point, we're working under the assumption that in actual fact, it will be at the end of the project, which will be July 1st, so 2021. So that gives us a little bit more time because we have to use the money up, and we didn't want to waste it. It was really important to us that we did what we could to make a big difference on this. And we also had a question as to whether or not we could jumpstart a few things and use it, especially with the COVID issues going on, which every community is facing right now. And the short answer is no. The money really has to go for mitigating the negative effects of the economic vitality of the community because of the rail and bridge project. So we had to really rethink how we could do things under this age of social distancing, trying not to bring people together, events, all that, because so much of what we were doing was community building, as well as trying to stimulate the economy. So needless to say, we have a few challenges in front of us. And there are a few other things too, the things that we can't do that other towns can do, but we're working around those. For instance, there's a lot of towns that are planning to close down streets so that they can have marketplaces and dining in the streets. Well, clearly we can't do that because Main Street is going to be used for construction. It's going to be bringing the concrete precast down there. So obviously our streets are off limit for us to be doing anything like that. So we're trying to stay within the parameters of the grant. And one of the things that we've tried to do from day one is to make sure that whatever we spend it on, or most of it, that it will help us going forward. So it's not like once and done. We've looked at it as infrastructure, be it the website or putting in bundle, different things like that. Everything we've looked for at BI, okay, how will this continue going forward after the Rail and Bridge project? And we're going to try and continue to do a lot of that. So, needless to say, this is really an update because, you know, we're doing the best we can on it and to stay within the parameters. But Karen's going to go through the programs. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate.
Hey, look at that. All right. So we are way over time, so I'm going to assume that you guys have taken a look at this and just go pretty quickly through. So, of course, we want to continue the Experience Middlebury website. We've started already doing video tours of the downtown businesses. That may get expanded. So far, those are really popular on social media and well received by the business owners. So I'm looking forward to continuing that. And then we would continue with social media advertising. So we would be continuing on with our digital media marketing specialist, who's Sue Hoxie, through the duration. And keep going. As you know, we've invested a lot of time and money at this point to really cultivate the Middlebury Money Program and to grow it. So we want to continue to do that. This is going to continue to be really how we offer shopping incentives going forward. So we want to make sure that our supplies of checks and envelopes and stickers are still up to date for how much we're going to be giving away, as well as promoting the program and continuing to increase participation, which is hovering pretty close to 100%, but we still have, you know, a few outliers that just don't necessarily understand it, or turnover happens, and we just sort of have to continue that education and communication. So one of the plans that we had originally was going to be every Wednesday night event downtown. So throughout the summer, the whole closure period, we were planning on every Wednesday night was going to be shopping promotion, dining promotions, live music, events at bundle, shopping incentives, giveaways, you know, not a block party, but really kind of a block party with just without the street being closed. And obviously that really went out the window with this whole thing. So we had to try to figure out how do we take the elements of that might still work and apply them to now not wanting to bring people together at the same place and time, but still figure out a way to support businesses. So what we want to do is 5 to 7 promotions throughout the closure period. So we're looking at every other week with prizes that would include local products and Middlebury money. We'd be promoting that on social media and through local print media. The summer promotions are going to include a gift card challenge. So that would be like a 1 week, see how many gift cards we can sell in a week from all these businesses. We combine the names of everybody that has purchased in that week, and then we draw prizes. Based on that, we'd have something similar with restaurants. The co-op very generously designed this Love Middlebury graphic for us to use. So we're going to do a social media campaign around Show Us the Ways You Love Middlebury. We want to continue, if you guys remember, we had talked at one point about hiding those little gems around town and having kids try to search for them, and then they could turn it in for Middlebury money or keep them. We want to do that as one of the promotions, and then curated gift baskets from all over town as one of the prizes. So the thing with these promotions is they certainly aren't the same as what we were planning on for the Wednesday nights. However, it's a way to try to continue to promote the businesses and support the businesses, to continue to try to build community. It's a mix of full town and downtown only, and it offers the opportunity for people to either do it in person or online by the phone or on the phone. So we're just trying to check all those boxes to try to make it accessible to as many people as possible throughout the summer. And I have today the Love Middlebury stickers. So if anybody wants them, just send me an email and I'm happy to drop some off to you. Do you have a question, Barb?
No, I want some.
I'll bring them tomorrow. So the Midnight Strolls obviously been really popular the last several years as we started doing those Middlebury money incentives. If you remember, we give the incentives both because we do like the $1,000 set aside each night where if you bring in a receipt, the first 100 people that bring in their receipt showing that they've spent at least $25, they get $10 free Middlebury money to go spend whatever. Most of them spend it that night. And then we also do envelopes at the registers throughout the evening as just random prizes. And the merchants absolutely love this because people are spending the Middlebury money right then and there most of the time. So, but as we found out this past year, they also were holding on to it and using it in places like Farhad's store. So it's a nice mix of being able to support not just the downtown businesses, but everyone. So we want to obviously do those again for this year. So bundle, real hard to have an event space right now. We made the decision as all of this, we took about 3 weeks or so to kind of sit on this and figure out, kind of see what the trajectory was of COVID-19 in Vermont. We were trying to sort of figure out what our steps would be. We decided to pause bundle for the time being. However, we are taking a look at what other communities are doing with their outdoor dining and outdoor open air markets and trying to figure out how do we apply the bundle model to that. So that's something that we're currently thinking through. And I think that that's something that we'll be able to implement this summer. But we have every intention of doing bundle in some capacity, whatever makes sense, as soon as it's safe to do it. This is something that actually Dan suggested at a roundtable discussion with Middlebury businesses. So it's already in the works. We've started it already. It's a guide of all Middlebury retail dining and lodging. We started it just for downtown, and then we had room, so we decided to expand it. It'll be available within Middlebury for visitors. We're going to start off with small quantities, see what happens with businesses, and we'll do a reprint next spring, probably, hopefully with a larger quantity. But that'll be something that we'll distribute to start locally, and then we'll see, what the reception is. And we may do a bigger run with a bigger distribution in the spring. We still want to attract visitors eventually when it makes sense to do so. What we had started out brainstorming was with various community partners. We had talked about doing a professionally branded campaign for visitors that this money would essentially create that campaign, and we would then be able to utilize all of our community partnerships for the reach. Because truth be told, while it seems like a lot of money, this is not a lot of money that we're playing with here when it comes to actually attracting visitors to our area. When you look at doing placements in some of these regional publications, this money's not going to go very far. So we started thinking about how do we stretch those dollars further, and we know that we have some pretty big partners in this community with a large reach. And so we felt like if we could get them all on board early on, create a branded campaign about visiting Middlebury, maybe using some of those assets that we've already identified, that would be a really good way to try to attract people back to the area when it's time. That's it. So I would love to hear questions, other ideas. This was, I will say, a challenge, professionally unlike one that I have had yet, just because my go-to is to bring people together. And I've never had to think about marketing in a way that kept people apart. So, I'm disappointed that we're in the situation that we're in, but I also feel like, we've tried really hard to try to figure out how do we kind of fill all of those buckets. And also how do we, within the parameters of the grant, how do we set ourselves up for revitalizing this community when this is all said and done? And I think that that's something we always have to have our eye on, because that work really needs to start now. And, our downtown is, I'll be blunt, our businesses it's not good for a lot of our businesses right now. And I'm very concerned about what this is going to do to them. So I think, it's just it's tough, and we have put this out to businesses and gotten feedback, and the feedback has generally been, this is great. Don't know how much it's going to matter, but this is great.
Heather.
So Karen, looks good. Just a quick suggestion for something to consider for getting people downtown more often, spending money over time in maybe smaller amounts. Consider maybe some kind of promotion or giveaway. You know how we do on midnight strolls where you spend $25. What if we expand it a little bit so it's $25? 4 different retailers over 4 weeks, you know, so during the shutdown, you have to go downtown once a week for 4 weeks and spend $25 at a different store, and then put people in and maybe, you know, I don't know where your funds are at and your giveaway money's at, but then maybe there's a bigger prize for that, you know, to try to encourage people to keep coming. You know, if we made a habit over 4 weeks of people going downtown to spend money, does it then become where, oh, well, even though that giveaway is not coming, I'm still going to go downtown the 5th week and spend money somewhere else? So just an idea I had. So anyway.
Thank you. I do like that idea. One thing I wanted to mention and forgot, we do actually have a number of downtown businesses who are going to choose not to reopen to shoppers. They're going to stay curbside only for the duration of the project. So that's just, I feel like it's a little relevant to what it is that we're talking about doing. And we'll see, you know, if those plans actually end up lasting, or if they change their mind as we get going. I'm not really sure, but I think we have 5 right now who are choosing to do that. But I do really like the idea of, for those that are going to be open to traffic, getting people down there on a more regular basis. So I'll look into how we might be able to execute something like that, Heather.
Another piece too that came out is that we have to be a little prudent on the amount of the giveaways that we give away. So the state has kind of warned us that we have to be really careful that we don't overextend that. So we're trying to work with other ways of doing it, which is tricky because that would be the easiest way to do it, honestly, but we know we can't do that.
Right, and actually we had Kathleen had a really great suggestion about, you know, sort of having a way to bring people in a little bit more, with a little bit more urgency, with like a coupon that expires and things like that, and the state nixed that as well. They said that wasn't something that would be eligible. So as we look at all of these things, we're just sort of running it through, you know, the parameters to sort of see, like, okay, you know, that we have to be, like, one of the things that the state's marketing secretary is looking at for some of the regional things is, like, you know, kind of like the jump on it deals or whatever. They're like, you know, get this for a $50 product for $25 and they're subsidizing the rest of this grant. You know, it's just as one of the ideas. We can't do those things, you know. So those are the kinds of things that we've really looked into, all of that kind of stuff as well, and you know, we're just kind of bound by what we're bound by right now.
So that took away our ability to create any sense of urgency or drive it in any specific time frames.
Right.
Yeah. I wondered, I hadn't heard that. I was going to ask you. Just do it again. I thought maybe I missed it in your presentation.
No, we were, that was one of the first things we asked about, and unfortunately a no-go.
There's going to be plenty saved for post.
So that is, so that's another point that they made, is that this really is meant to mitigate the project impacts. And so things like the regional marketing, for instance, we're going to start that work now. We're not going to ask our partners to then put it out to potential visitors until next summer. But we have to really start the ball rolling now. So we have to be really strategic in how we do all of these things. The money has to have all been spent by July 1 next year. So, we're really trying to figure out the best way to set ourselves up for, and then, I've also started talking with the state on different things. Today we talked about at our downtown call about the potential placemaking grants and whether Bundle might be able to take advantage of something like that if we could continue it into the fall of next year. So we're trying to get all our ducks in a row.
No pressure.
Any other questions? Everybody moved on the screen after you shared your screen with us, and then they came back. I have to find everybody again. Okay. Thank you very much, Karen and Nancy, for all the work you're doing on this. I know when you thought it was challenging, it wasn't before.
It's true.
No, I really wish we could go back to the days when this was our only issue, I'll be honest.
Yeah, when it was just challenging, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, thank you guys.
So do we all.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you.
Okay, so Dan, Dan Warner here. It's the update recommendations from the Infrastructure Committee.
Right, the first item is I need the board to approve the final phases from the Otter Creek Engineering Agreement from May of last year. At the time, we only approved phases 1, 2, and 3, which was survey, concept design, and final design. And so for tonight, I need to approve the bid phase and the construction phase for the decommissioning of the wastewater treatment plant facility over on Lucia Shaw. So the bid phase and the construction phase are both hourly budget estimates. Bid phase is $3,000 and the construction phase is $18,200. So we're a little behind on the bid phase approval, going through the virus process. But anyway, tonight I need to approve phases 4 and 5 of the original proposal. The total on that is going to be $21,200.
I'll move to approve item 4 bid phase and item 5 construction phase in the Otter Creek Engineering's May 2019 proposal for engineering services for the old wastewater treatment facility decommissioning project for a not to exceed cost of $21,200.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions on that?
Brian, I'm going to, as before with Otter Creek Engineering, because I utilize them professionally, I'll recuse myself.
Okay.
Can I make just one comment?
Sure.
Dan, you had mentioned at Infrastructure Committee the other day that so far the project was moving along quickly, and that Otter Creek thought that we would definitely be under the not to exceed costs. And I think that might be important for the board to know as well.
Yes, I stopped down there Thursday after we had our infrastructure meeting. So about midday Thursday, the majority of the tanks and buildings that need to be collapsed were collapsed. So it went fast. So what's left now is they have to clear the area in that lower basement to have the wall poured on the east side of the control building. So the demolition went pretty quick. I'll talk a little bit more in a bit about the reuse project, but the water main portion is mostly what's remaining. They've already done some of the site work cleanup, so it went pretty fast. That part anyway.
We're gonna need all the savings we can find, Dan.
I hear you.
Okay. Hearing no questions, all in favor of the motion as written, signify by thumbs up. So 6-4 and 1 abstention. That's it. Okay, Dan?
All right, second item is the recommendation on award of a bid for the police department building reuse project. We received 6 bids for the project. VIA, the architect, that's Asher Nelson and crew, have reviewed the bids. He provided you a recommendation letter, bid summary, and there's also in your packet there's a a bid template, and if you have that in front of you, or if you can recall by looking at it, there are some bid alternatives in that. The base bid from Bms Construction, who is out of Rutland, is $701,000, and then mid-page on that bid template there are 4 alternatives. Alternative 2 and alternative 4. We'll need to get the roof off of the old sand filter building before we can take a look at what is the alternate 2 is the CMU, the concrete masonry units. We need to look down in the wall once we get the roof off, and then we also need to do a little investigation of what is on the depth of the fill in the cruiser garage area. So those 2 are strong possibilities that we'll need them. But I just wanted to bring them to your attention. They also, Asher, when he reviewed the bid, thought that the alternative 4 was a little pricey compared to the other bidder, so he reviewed that with Mr. Shappy, and they discovered they had some duplicate tallies. So alternate 4 is really $4,830 instead of $8,300. The other 2 alternatives, one are the overhead doors in the old control building, and then a fire alarm system for the cruiser parking garage. Both of those alternatives are within our budget. So at some point in the future, I'll bring those back through the infrastructure committee and then through the select boards for approval. But for right now, we need to do just is to approve the contract total of $701,000, and then the rest of these will come as change orders through a process. We have a pre-construction meeting tentatively scheduled for June 4th to get the engineers, the architects, and the contractors, and Parker, who is doing the demolition. Parker is also a subcontractor for Bms Construction in the reuse project. So we're going to have people down there on June 4th to get this thing kicked off. So tonight I'm asking you to approve the bid for Bms Construction. At the bottom of that bid template, there is a couple references: Vermont Country Store Warehouse Edition, and they also did a 60,000 square foot building on down in Rutland. Rather large projects, and Asher has checked out their work, and they seem ready to go.
Pleasure of the board.
I'll move to award the construction contract for the police department adaptive reuse project to VMS Construction for a total cost of $701,000.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a question I've had before. So this is the low bidder, and they're from Rutland, and the next bidder is only about $5,000 higher, and although not from Middlebury, is a lot closer to home. And I'm not always. My question is, why do we go down there? Because if we took somebody like Naylor Breen, that would be within the county, and I assume all the subs would be in the county, and that means all the money would be distributed in the county. And so I just don't understand why a local person who could do the job with at the bottom is 0.4%. I don't understand that.
All I can tell you is that we typically have approved voters or bidders who are responsible and responsive. I know in the past the board and infrastructure committee has had questions asked about how far do you go either out of town or away from town, and what's the percentage of so-called savings or more expensive. Yeah, it's a consideration. I don't have more of an answer than that.
Okay, I just know if it's closer to home and it's providing our neighbors subs with money, that trickles down to businesses that have their people who are making a living off of projects like this who live close enough to participate in our businesses and spend money in town. It just seems like a small price to pay to keep it more local, but again, I'm the new guy.
So can I?
Yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
I just wanted to say quickly, I hear what you're saying, Dan, and I do understand, certainly having been a contractor for a lot of years, wanting to see more dollars go to local people. But on a project this size, we really have to rely on our architect's evaluation of the responsiveness on the bidder and checking references and all that stuff. And I think if we get into asking them to check on, let's say, the 3 lowest bidders, it increases our costs in spending on the architect, which then we can't use to spend on the project itself. So there are some other potential costs in doing those kind of evaluations on not just the lowest bidder, but, you know, some percentage up from there. And I don't think we should send a message of discouraging contractors from the Rutland or Burlington area, because we want to have as competitive a bidding process as we can, and having 6 bids come in on a project this size is actually really good. But on the same side, I do hear what you're saying. I do agree with what you're saying. Just how do we balance all of that together? And I think we just try to do the best we can.
Well, I guess my comment would be is I just, again, I don't have the database that you all have, but it's always the low bidder. So it looks like we get the bids in, we start at the bottom. If the lowest one seems to be competent, qualified, has a good resume, which I assume most of them bidding on a project this size would have that, then we accept it. I just don't understand that. But
Well, there is, I think, also the question. I think the point that Heather made, that by going afield, we get more bidders, and I suspect that also has an effect on. I mean, they're competing for the lowest bid, and that does provide, I think, probably a better array of people bidding on these projects.
I understand that, but this project is the bottom line looks like it's about $3,000 difference.
No, I realize that. I'm simply saying is that if we choose the one that's close to home, then we're going to have fewer bidders coming from a little further away, and I think in the long run we'll find ourselves paying more and more for projects because we'll have fewer bidders.
I guess in my short period of time, it doesn't look like very many bidders locally have gotten anything. So
Dan, you know, as the chair of the infrastructure committee, I am happy to, you know, the next projects we have coming up, take a look at what we're asking our engineers or architects to evaluate from bidders, and maybe we, you know, and Dan Warner is here and can hear this too. We consider, you know, if we've got a local bidder and a non-local bidder that are within a certain percentage, we ask the engineer to evaluate and check references on both so that we can make a determination of, you know, to maybe go with more local, even if they're a little higher. So, Dan Warner, I don't know if you could comment further on how we do that and still keep it fair and not look like we're favoring. I also don't want to, you know, I don't know what the right way is to do that, so.
Right. Some years ago, we had issues with trying to do a local contractor, and we decreased the number of bidders because people figured that, well, it's going to go to someone in Middlebury, so we didn't get bidders. That's the hazard of that. So looking at these subcontractors on BMS's list, I do know, well, there's a few local contractors, a couple that I can pull right out. And I do know some of the other ones do have employees that do live in the area. So it's a hard one because then you get into the point of looking at each bid and their subcontractors and, doing a residency requirement. What's the value? Yeah, that gets difficult,
Okay. Nick?
Well, I think taking it one step further in Heather's message, I don't want to send the wrong message out because we want, construction is a big regional situation. We don't want a situation where our contractors maybe are restricted from being able to bid in another area. So I think in fairness, this is the way you have to do it. And Dan pointed out that the subs are coming from all over as well as are their employees. I see projects on a national level where I have subs coming from several different states on a project, and I'll have maybe a local GC on it, or a GC who's from several states over and hiring a lot of local. I think it's just the fairness of the bid process, and unless we come up with a good, equitable way to do that, which I've never seen yet, I think we just have to continue it this way.
So we have a motion on the floor and a second, and we've had some good dialogue over Dan's question about preference for local bidders. Are there any other questions on that motion? Not seeing any. So we'll call a vote on this motion to support VMS construction bid. All in favor? Thumbs up.
I'm going, Brian, I'm going to abstain because I just don't think I don't think I should vote on it from what I said and what I need to learn. So I'll just abstain.
That's fine. So we have 6-4 and 1 abstention. And Dan,
Brian,
yes.
sorry, I know we're short on time. I just wanted to say really quickly that I'm really, really excited to see this project finally moving forward. This has been something that, I've been working on since before I was on the Selectboard and part of the infrastructure committee. So big thanks to Dan and everyone involved and finally getting this project off the ground. I'm really excited to see the finished project.
I think we all are, but nobody more excited than Chief. Hanley's been asking for this for how long? 15 years or whatever?
About that.
Okay, Dan, water and wastewater budget?
Sure. So in your packet is the first draft of the water and sewer budgets for FY21. The infrastructure committee got a brief review of this, just to help you without getting too far into it. On the right side of each of those budgets in red ink are some of the highlights that Bill Kernan and or Bob Wells supplied. So you can some of the numbers that changed somewhat. There's little notes on what that means. That helps you when you review these. For the water budget, the bottom line on the last page requires has $1,664,675, which means that we need to raise that in revenues. So you'll see on line 4 for water charges at the top of the page under revenue is the same figure. That is the amount that we would need to raise through water charges. I'll point out that the expense, you'll see there's a $185,000 jump from last year, or the current year, I should say, that we're in. Some of that is $110,000 annual increase we're going to try to do for raising more money for capital improvements. And the other item that contributes to that is if you look on line 174 and 175, that is the water principal and interest for the last $1 million of the money we decided to go for in 2012-2013. So those two items are the big contributors for the increase in need for water charges in the water department. Wastewater budget, again, there are little notes on the sides in red ink, or red print, I should say, for items that Bill and Bob have saw some variance to them. And when you look on the bottom of the last page, the expenses anticipated for the water or for the wastewater budget are $2,791,274. That amount has to be raised through various revenues. So if you go back to the front page, top page, you'll see some sewer charges, which comes from the quarterly bills, and the other large contributions are the sewer surcharges that comes from a few businesses in the industrial park. And the third larger revenue is from septic dumping that we collect at the plant. Those are the big revenue makers for the town. So for the wastewater budget. The sewer expenses are pretty flat. There will be a slight increase in rate, but nothing significant. So there's the first draft. The infrastructure committee is going to look at these, and some rate options on their first meeting in June.
Any questions of Dan on that? Hearing none, why don't you move on to the street sweeper, Dan?
Okay. So the infrastructure committee reviewed some information from Bill Kernan about a bid package for a new street sweeper. Ours is I believe it's a 1999 sweeper. It's been on the topic for probably 3 or 4 years for replacement. We did program it in this next fiscal year. The estimated price tag is $270,000. This is a vacuum sweeper as compared to a mechanical sweeper, which we have now. We demoed one maybe about a year or so ago. So these are a vacuum sweeper. They actually suck the dirt off the pavement and the gutters and off the top of the catch basins. A lot less dust is generated, which makes that we hear from the store owners. Once we go down with that mechanical sweeper and stir things up, even though they both have a water sprayed at the brooms, it just creates a lot of fine dust. And the business owners come in the morning, they got this dust all over the front of their place, and blows in when the doors are open. Anyway, Bill's looked at you put a bid package together. We talked about getting that sent out, and then we talked about the finances. So tonight we're just looking at your authorization to just go out for bid, and then bring it back through back to the infrastructure committee for a review, and then if it goes forward, come back to you in the future for an approval. I believe Bill said that this is going to be roughly a 90-day or more procurement process once the bid is awarded. So there's a time factor that is part of this purchase. We did at the town meeting we increased the amount of revenues we're going to set aside for purchases for equipment in this next fiscal year. We added $47,000 in this next budget year on top of the $164,000 from last year. That's from last year. And so we talked about, I'm not sure when this was, Kathleen, maybe about a year ago. No, it was like, I guess it was in town meeting, about tapping the fund balance for a portion of the equipment purchases. So Bill we have 3 items that we're looking for in this next fiscal year. One is the Dodge stake body, the street sweeper, of course, and then an international in-town plow truck. So we also talked about the meaning of maybe postponing a couple of those, depending on how things go with the budget. And so right now we're looking at just trying to get a good bid price on a sweeper if you choose to do that, so we can have a discussion about that in the future. So that's where that's at.
We're just approving the bid package, not the actual purchase at this point, correct?
Correct.
Right.
I'll move to authorize the submission of the bid package for the purchase of a new street sweeper.
Second.
Any questions on this, Dan?
Yeah, Kathleen, you submitted a email requesting them about the timing and funding sources. What was the driver on that, and what's your opinion on this? Is this something we shouldn't be doing?
No, that I felt like I just needed to remind the board that we are drawing from the fund balance from this purchase, and this is a financially difficult time. So I would agree with going forward with the bid process, see what the results are, and perhaps we'll have some better information about what our receipts are looking like at that time to review the funding.
Okay, thank you.
Heather?
I would just say that we can put this street sweeper out to bid, but it doesn't mean we have to accept any of the bids or ultimately decide to purchase the unit. But it does give us some more information on, on whether our estimate is good and, turnaround times, and would anybody even give us anything for our old one. It just gives us some more pieces. It doesn't bind us to making a decision to purchase or not. There's definitely more discussion to be had around financing, etc. But this is a piece of equipment that we've been trying to replace. I know Dan said 3 or 4 years, but I think it may have been a little longer than that. So I think we're okay to move forward because we're not committing ourselves yet to any definite purchase.
All right. Any other questions? Comments?
I think Nick's trying to say something.
I am, and I'm realizing, of course, I'm sitting up here as the light's gone down, so I'm suddenly getting darker, so I will definitely turn the lights on and appear after we're done. Dan, in the hierarchy of the 3 things we're looking to purchase, is this the top? Is this the most important?
Yes.
Okay.
We chatted about that at the infrastructure committee. Definitely the street sweeper would be the higher priority.
Okay. So it's higher than the truck, the plow?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, when you see that thing coming down the street, you run, because it looks like it's going to kill you with the dust, with the dust going around it. So.
Okay.
Nick, I did ask the same question of Bill and Dan the other day in the infrastructure committee meeting, and number 2 is the plow truck, and number 3 is the Dodge truck, based on Bill's analysis. So. And we did have a conversation about the possibility that we may want to consider delaying that, and that pains me considerably because we've worked so hard to try to get things on a replacement schedule, so our replacement schedule's at a real even rate rather than spending this huge amount one year and less amount, trying to keep it more on an even keel. But I do obviously recognize the difficult times we're in, and it may be that it makes sense to not replace anything this year, but let's at least move forward with the bid and see where we're at and where we want to go from there.
I appreciate that, Heather, and I concur with you on this one.
My dog is going crazy. I don't know what got a peeping Tom out here or something. So, any last comments on that? Hearing none, all in favor of going forward with the bid package, signify with thumbs up. Okay, can't hardly see you, Nick, so.
I'm going to turn a light on, hold on.
Little lights will help. Any other projects to update us on, Dan?
No, I mentioned we're gonna have the June 4th will be the pre-construction meeting for the building reuse project. Katy Road is still scheduled for early July. That's a culvert replacement. And downtown Route 116 water main is still looking like late July.
All right, so next, maybe Heather, you could just walk us through the discussion at the infrastructure committee on Works Committee, where that was left off.
Sure. So we did discuss in infrastructure committee last week Victor's request that we consider changing the name of the committee from infrastructure back to the original public works. And I'm sorry I didn't go back and look at the minutes to refresh my brain, but if I remember correctly, we had 2 in favor of keeping the name the same. 1 definitely in favor of the change, and then I want to say 3 sort of could go either way depending on some additional information. So, as part of that discussion, one thing I found interesting is that Luther Tenney had the suggestion that there were even other possibilities of names we could consider, like facilities or I can't remember, something in buildings or something to that effect. So we did not actually have a vote or make a recommendation. It was mainly just a discussion to kind of gauge where committee members were on the idea of changing the name. It didn't seem like there was a real strong interest one way or the other. So do you want me to talk a little bit about my thoughts, or do you want Victor to have a chance?
Go ahead, Heather.
So I've thought about it a little bit and wanted to go back with Kathleen's help, thank you, trying to remember why we decided to change it in the first place. And I think some of it was really about the fact that Public Works identified the things that just Public Works had control over. And I think at the time the committee was moving in the direction that we were considering things that were even outside of Public Works. Like at the time there was discussion about Wi-Fi and broadband access for all, and that was really outside the scope of Public Works, although that has not been at the forefront in the last few years with everything else going on. We often think about and consider things that aren't necessarily under the purview of the Public Works Department, and I think trying to change the name was an attempt to reflect that a little bit. Does that mean that we shouldn't consider name change? No, I don't think so. But the other thing that came up for me personally was what's what's involved with changing the name back? And how much time of staff does that require? So I did talk to Kathleen briefly the end of last week and just asked her to put something together for us to consider on what she thought. Like, I don't have any idea, but, you know, changing the name and changing the website and just everything. I may not even be thinking all of it. What does that involve? Is it an hour thing? Is it a week? You know, I don't know. So, Kathleen, I don't know if you're prepared to talk about that tonight or if you want to wait and provide something later. Because I don't think we talked until Friday. So
yeah, I did check with Beth and Chris, and we're thinking at the 1 to 2 hour.
Okay. So then there's not much argument there for not changing it. So, so anyway, I guess I don't see a reason one way or other than I hate to ask staff to spend time on something that I don't know that there's a real urgency right now to do. But anyway, the rest of the board certainly could weigh in, and maybe that would change my mind one way or the other.
I do think that was at the time when we were folding everything underneath to free up so that Kathleen had fewer direct reports also. Am I tracking that right, Kathleen?
It was about that same time.
Yeah, and so we were looking for a different name that was more inclusive, and we came up with Infrastructure Committee. Could it be something else? I mean, Buildings and Grounds or something like that, like you have at a lot of other institutions. I don't know if we're locked on any of that, except for I think we like our structure that we've developed, and the structure seems to work really well. If you know, what's in a name, I guess maybe, Victor, you tell us. And
I think,
wrong, so.
as I said, I mean, the term, it seems to me, is as far as description goes, infra in Latin means underneath or hidden, and structure, so you're talking about hidden structures, so the name really doesn't fit what we do, but maybe I'm a purist in that sense, so and I suspect that it may come from that, but it always seemed to me, I suppose as a child of the Depression, I grew up when Public Works sort of saved my life. It made it possible for me to go to have an education, so I'm rather partial to the notion of Public Works, but I think it does describe better what the committee does, and I would just as soon prefer that we move it back, but it's a restoration of a name, we're not coming up with something new. Sure, we could say buildings and grounds and facilities, and I mean there are a lot of other terms that we could use if we wanted. I'm not suggesting that we go fishing for new terms. I'm suggesting that simply we had I thought, a better term that more properly described things that we do with taxpayer money that provide services for the whole town.
If I could...
I'm just putting just one word. I think Public Works is easier to pronounce, I think.
Well, that's true too. Yes.
So interestingly, I was curious, you know, like what Victor said about the definition. So I Googled a couple of definitions just to see what came up, and I ended up with two different sites just so I could compare. And you know, like Victor's comment that it was only stuff under the ground. So this first definition said the basic physical and organizational structures and facilities, e.g. buildings, roads, power supplies, needed for the operation of a society or enterprise. the social and economic infrastructure of a country. And then another one, this one's actually from the Merriam-Webster website. Number one, the system of public works or a country, state, or region. Also the resources such as personnel, buildings, or equipment required for an activity. So I think the words are probably interchangeable one way or another, and I don't think one says more than the other. So I guess my only concern is that we just, change and change back and change. I just want to avoid that as much as possible. But otherwise, whatever we want to call it, I'll probably say both for a long time. So.
Hey, Brian, if I may.
Sure, Dan.
I did the same thing Heather did, and it made me realize that the term public works has probably been used too narrow and maybe incorrectly. People just think that's the highway department. But the dictionaries and Victor make a good point. Public works is more broadly defined. I think infrastructure has become a buzzword in the last 20 years. It's maybe used concurrently, interchangeably with public works. But when you tell people, well, it's got to go to the Public Works Committee, it's instantly recognized as what that is, and say, well, we got to talk about the Infrastructure Committee. The what? what is that? So if there's anything, there's name recognition with Public Works as the broader sense of the public infrastructure. As I said it again, the Public Infrastructure Committee. There you go.
So Heather, can you take that up at your next meeting again and see if you could at least come to a recommendation as part of the committee that's going to be the most affected?
Sure. So you would actually like us to provide you a recommendation on what we want the name to be?
What the committee feels is appropriate. Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think the one thing to keep in mind, though, too, Dan mentions that public works is just a commonly used term, but it's also what the professional associations call themselves. And they cover things such as facilities, they cover things such as roads and grounds. So this is what the professionals have historically called themselves. Now, whether the term is still relevant, well, they haven't found the need to change it. So, and it's different from those associations that represent the facility managers. So that's a different group entirely.
We'll send it to our professional committee and we'll see what we get back. Okay, so I'm going to move on. Kathleen, did you get yourself as a presenter here? Why don't you go ahead with that?
Okay, so last Monday, we received an unsolicited proposal from a net metering developer, and I forwarded that to the Energy Committee Chair, Howard Weidlitz, with the request that the Energy Committee come forward with a request on the net metering project, with a recommendation for the Select Board. The Energy Committee discussed it at their meeting last Wednesday and requested more time to put together a cohesive strategy for the best way to move forward with renewable solar projects. So to that end, the committee formed a subcommittee to take a deeper dive, including some benchmarking for other solar project developers. So based on that input, I'm suggesting that rather than limit the focus of the Energy Committee's review to a proposal from one vendor, the board may wish to consider asking the committee to broaden its scope to develop a formal framework for evaluating renewable energy proposals against actual community needs for consideration by the board. Strategies could include developing an RFP for net metering projects, recommending guidelines for evaluating future net metering proposals and or partnering with a nonprofit or business for development of a town-owned renewable energy project. And Howard is with us if he has anything to add.
I don't have anything to add, but I think it would make sense for us to look at this more broadly, since there are a lot of options out there. I know Ross Conrad had checked in with Green Lantern, who came to us, I guess, maybe it was 2 years ago. I'm not sure exactly when that was. And they're even offering a higher rate. So it would be nice to, and when I mean higher rate, I mean a greater discount, 12.5% versus 12%. So I think it would be good to take a step back and compare that to, or at least look through all the options. It could be even a combination of options. I know there are some things going on with Acorn right now, as we've seen in Bristol, you know, and even consideration of us putting together our own, or you know, developing an array that the town could use. So I think rather than look at one proposal, I think it would make more sense to look at this as a whole, and hopefully we can come up with something within the next 2 weeks, or at least some agreement within the subcommittee and the committee.
So I'd like to see us support that recommendation. We've talked a number of times in the past about, you know, opportunities for using more renewable energy at the town level. And there are opportunities out there. And not only would we be committing to the use and support of renewables, but we also would get a discount. And so it just seems to be something that we should task our energy committee to look at and make a recommendation to us and get us moving in the right direction. Thoughts?
Yeah, I have one, Brian, is just to make sure that it's really looking at renewables as a whole and not a bias toward one source or another.
Yeah, and at this point, we're talking, you know, how do we support our meters for the electricity? So. If I'm not seeing anybody who's against that, then Howard, if the committee could pursue that, we would appreciate it. If you can do it in 2 weeks, that's fine. But don't think that we're going to task you with this large of a mission and then you only give you 2 weeks to do it, because we really would rather have it be a thoughtful process and make sure that you're looking at all the options. So you tell us after you've met with your committee what you feel is appropriate. But you know, I think we would like to try to take advantage if there's opportunities out there for the town to save money and support renewable. Certainly, the community has pushed for us to do that, but we want to make sure that we're looking at what opportunities exist. So,
Absolutely, yeah. I agree.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Next, we've got outside consumption permits for 3 different venues, Fire and Ice. Trying to find my email from you. Fire and Ice, Middlebury Hearth, Flatbread, and Two Brothers. And I believe Chief said he had worked with them all and to have a plan that's agreeable. Is that correct, Kathleen?
That is correct. And 2 of these have been approved by the state under their expedited system, Two Brothers Tavern and Middlebury Hearth. So.
Okay. Pleasure of the board.
Okay, I move to approve the new outside consumption permit application for Two Brothers Tavern as requested.
I second.
Can we do all three of them at once?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So-
Anyone else? I'm sorry, go ahead, Heather.
I was just gonna say, I was just gonna ask you, Nick, to amend your motion.
Okay, well, and I will amend that motion to, in addition to Two Brothers Tavern, to also to Middlebury Hearth and to Fire and Ice Restaurants, with Fire and Ice pending the state approval.
Okay. And you got a second from Dan? So, any other questions on that? Hearing none, all in favor, thumbs up. Okay, unanimous. And I have heard from some of these vendors how appreciative they are for the community support, Kathleen and Jen and Chief Shaw and Chief Hanley, as well as the state. I think that everyone recognizes these are very difficult times, especially for the restaurants and Dan and for the hotels and motels. Yes, Dan.
Yeah, I talk to these people almost every day on Texas, and the struggle that they are all going through is I can't emphasize how difficult it is and how stressful and how endangered we all are as businesses such as this with being able to make it. Any advantage we can give to them in this, we need to be thinking about. So thanks.
Yeah, and I think that all of those agencies are doing everything that they can to adopt the rules to make it work.
I agree.
So Dan, you've got the check warrants.
So I'd like to make the motion under the authority granted by the Select Board on April 28, 2020. I have reviewed and approved on behalf of the board total expenditures in the amount of $234,659.29, consisting of $153,128.68 for accounts payable and $81,530.61 for the payroll for the period of May 13th, 2020 through May 26th, 2020, and move the board's approval of payments of these expenditures.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thumbs up. Unanimous. Okay. Kathleen, Town Manager's Report.
I have nothing to add. You have a list of correspondence in your packet, and nothing else.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen.
Oh, wait. I did want to. I did. I'm going to share my screen, I think. Hold on the local option tax report that came in. Hold on. So, surprisingly, our first quarter, January 2020 to March 2020, came in, our local option tax receipts came in at $201,000, which is 95% of what they were in the previous year, quarter one. After I received that, I took a look, just wanted to do some guesstimating, pure guesstimating at what our quarter receipts might look like for the next year based on that. So estimating, and this is just for the board's thought, that we are going to have reduced local option tax receipts in the coming quarters. And so I guesstimated the second quarter, which is April through June, at 50% of last year's receipts. Then the third quarter, which is July through September, at 65%. And then October through December, quarter 4 at 80%. So the total there for the year would be 754,761 compared to our $1,062,758 in this last year. So just something to think about. We will have a reduced local option tax, and we'll see what those numbers are as time goes by. And I'm happy to take any other guesses that people want to share with me and graph them out.
It's kind of like the ice going out on Joe's Pond or something?
Maybe that's what we should do for a fundraiser.
Question for you, though. There's been an increase in the online shopping. I was talking to a postman who was in here, and their package count his package count's been typically double or more than pre-COVID. And so I'm curious, are they all now required to collect not just the state, but also our local option tax?
Yes.
Be interesting to see when those receipts start coming in.
Well, we'll get our second quarter payment in mid-August, typically.
Okay. Thank you, Kathleen. Board member concerns. Victor, you're top left of my screen.
I have nothing.
Nothing. Heather, top right.
Sorry, needed to unmute. I just have a quick observation. So my family and I traveled up to the Northeast Kingdom for the holiday weekend, and I have to tell you, I was really surprised with the number of out-of-state plates on the Vermont roads this holiday weekend. And I'm just curious to see where the COVID numbers end up in about 2 weeks with all of the out-of-state. I can't imagine that all the out-of-state plates I saw people, I'm not sure where they're staying or, from all over, not just like Massachusetts or New York. We followed a vehicle with Alabama plates for part of our trip up north. So it's just interesting and curious. So just something to keep an eye on as things move forward. And I also just wanted to say quickly, it was interesting to see that our package size was back to normal.
Well, you had a bonus mini packet today for all of the activity over the weekend.
Farhad.
I just want to go back to the mask for a quick second, if you don't mind. I know Judy, before she left, and if she's still watching, she said that we should put it all out. Like she wants to put the message out, right? Is that I'm hoping that's what she meant. But my question now is, who in the United States does not know about social distancing today? You turn the TV on. Every 5 minutes you have a CDC guideline, there's an ad going on, right? It advises you what to do, wear a mask, wear gloves, and hand sanitize and everything. So I'm just trying to understand what more should we be doing, if that's what she means.
I'm taking that as a rhetorical question.
Yes.
Okay. Lindsay?
I actually have thoughts about that, not as a rhetorical question. I do think we might want to consider putting out townwide messaging, just reiterating in very simple terms, almost like an ad campaign or just standard messaging, encouraging people to do the right thing. I do think, of course the information is out there. Of course people know what they're supposed to be doing, but I do think it's falling on businesses to come up with their own personal practices for each store. And while we're not mandating anybody doing anything, I think, it's an opportunity for a sense of community and how we can help our town recover. Yeah, that's my thought.
Okay, thank you. Dan?
I'm tired. I have nothing.
Okay. Nick?
Equally tired, Brian, and I have nothing.
Okay, so before I get a motion for adjournment, so the mask thing is a big deal for many people in our community. It will be on our agenda for the next one. We need to be thinking about what's appropriate, where do we want to go. I do think that, I know we talked about New York, but I think Vermont is definitely a different environment than New York. And so I think we need to look at what's going to work in our community. And so we need to have that discussion. We need to come to some sort of an agreement. I'm hoping that we can, at the next board meeting, come to an agreement what we want to do with, whether that's messaging, whether that's actually having a message from the board policy, or if we want to go so far as to make it enshrined in our local law. So I think we've got to really ought to think about what we want to do and what are those ramifications, and so that's our challenge, to come to some sort of agreement for our next meeting on that, and not have it be 2 hours. Okay? I'll take a motion for adjournment then.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Have a good evening, everyone.
Night.
Good night.